Werewolf by night is kind of a redundant term because unless you're altering the, at this point, generally accepted rules of lycanthropy, you wouldn't be a werewolf by day. Anyways, Werewolf by Night, the MCU Halloween special. It's about an hour long, and it's on Disney Plus, and it is fun. Is the short version. So there's a little bit of an aspect to it that feels slightly off, but okay. So overall, I would say that this has a gothic and horror aesthetic, but is not scary and also doesn't really seem to be intending to be. The ways it does its quote unquote scares are very kind of universal monsters for the most part. You know, it's these little bit slow builds. It's not big on jump scares, but it's the atmosphere. It is the vibe of danger that is going on around the characters involved, but it's not like trying to be a creeping dread. It's just like I said, it's just going for atmosphere more than anything else. I think it does that atmosphere pretty well. I think shooting it in black and white with really only the Bloodstone, which is sort of the big MacGuffin of the story, being the only real color aspect of the thing, that also sort of puts its intentions very front and center. Like, this is going old school. Campy would be an overstatement, but sort of overwrought classic horror kind of style. Now, on the one hand, that would position it for fairly family friendly fare, where like it has the aesthetic of something scary, but is not actually. So that could, in theory, put it in the realm of something like Nightmare Before Christmas, Paranorman, things that can be watched by the whole family, but like have all the elements of something creepy. Except that some of the violence is harsh enough that I would say, no, actually, this really shouldn't be family viewing. And if I were going to I couldn't decide if I was going to say land or label or level, and I kind of just flubbed that. Anyway, if I was going to level a primary criticism at it, it's that I feel like the violence undercuts a lot of what else is going on. Like, it feels almost tacked on. Like somebody was like, okay, but like, if we're going to later on be doing things like Deadpool and we're going to have some R-rated stuff, and if we're working on Blade, which is going to be more horror stuff, maybe we should show, Marvel can do violent and stuff. I'm like, I don't think the rest of the tone of this special made this an appropriate venue to try and establish that. And it's not even that the violence is like bad or the most gratuitous thing in the world. It's not, but like, it does not shy away from the blood when it gets violent. Like, blood splatters at the camera. It's very clear that this is viciously, I almost say gory. Like, it's not, but this is for Marvel especially, this is quite bloody. And that in and of itself is not a criticism. The reason I have it as a criticism here is because it's aping so much the aesthetic and feel of things that are old school horror, like your Dracula, your Wolfman, your Frankenstein, which weren't bloody and weren't this kind of violent. So it's just weird to me that so much of its presentation apes something that did not have this style of violence. It feels like a little bit of a mismatch there. Having gotten that out of the way, as I said at the front end, I did have fun with this. I think if you have an appreciation for things like the Universal monster movies, Dracula, Frankenstein, The Mummy, Creature from the Black Lagoon, that sort of general era of black and white horror films, I think you'll probably have some fun with this, assuming you also have an interest in the MCU. It's not like it's super continuity heavy. It's definitely not. It's pretty self-contained, but it does have a little bit of the MCU flavor to it, by which I mean there are jokes that undercut things. But I know that bothers some people a lot about a lot of the MCU. It feels pretty appropriate here since, as I said, it's not actually scary. Although I could see someone making an argument that it should have done it more straight-faced, which is what the stuff that it's trying to visually look at did at the time. But since, as I said, it's not trying to be genuinely scary, really, that I didn't feel that the jokes were intrusive, and like I did genuinely laugh at some of these. The one that really got me, well, actually, most of the jokes that really hit me were the ones that involved Man Thing, which, first of all, they didn't make this joke, but I cannot think of that without thinking of the fact that when the character was introduced in the 70s, his solo comic was called Giant Size Man Thing. How were they allowed to get away with that? Anyways, but like the initial joke that our main character, Jack, who is the titular werewolf, he, is friends with Man Thing, and he's, you should call him by his name. What's his name? Ted. Which is comic accurate, by the way. They play it as a joke, but like, that's the guy's name. Or it was before he was, yeah. But I laughed at that. I thought that was a decent joke. And then later on, when Man Thing shows up again towards the end, I'm not going to give, I'm going to try to avoid spoiling like stuff towards the end, but like just as a general thing, him showing up again, and there's kind of a joke played off with how casual the interaction Man Thing has with the character that he has an interaction with. And again, I just kind of liked it. I just enjoyed the contrast of being as monstrous as he is and having a very casual relationship with a couple of characters. I enjoyed that. The overall premise of this whole thing of these monster hunters sort of competing for the Bloodstone, and the thing's very vague about like what that in theory means. I'm going to assume the Bloodstone's going to come up in something else down the line. As far as characters who might come back and might show up again, there's Man Thing himself, maybe. There's Jack, which I don't recall them mentioning his last name, but for anyone who isn't aware, the werewolf by night, his name is Jack Russell, as in Jack Russell Terrier. That's kind of what I mean by like, I'm not mad that there's jokes to undercut this stuff, because a lot of the jokes were kind of baked into some of these characters from their very inception in the comics. We also get a fair bit of the character of Elsa Bloodstone, who's a character I'm aware of, but don't know much about. And she kind of has this thing where she's from a line of very famous monster hunters, but she kind of is resenting and pushing back against that legacy. And I think the actress pulls that element off well. She looks good for the part. And the other characters, most of them played pretty broadly, but for what this thing is, it works decently. I think there's just the right amount of sort of pathos in Jack. Gael Garcia Bernal is, very good. He has a very expressive face, so it works quite well for this part. And for that sort of more laid back, more fun than scary, just sort of fitting the vibe of the month of October, yeah, I think it works well for that. I don't see it becoming like a staple of my October viewing in future. I don't see that happening, but as a one-off, yeah, I had fun with this. And while like I have a little mixed feelings about exactly who to recommend this to, as I said, because of the sort of the contrast of how violent it gets versus the overall tone and the mood of the thing, but I don't know. I enjoyed it. Don't really need to rewatch it, but I enjoyed it. Have you seen Werewolf by Night? What are your thoughts on it? Whatever they are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon's what pays the bills around here and allows me to actually do this as my living and talk to you folks about what I do as often as I do. Any amount you can contribute helps there, and there are rewards at every tier, but don't worry too much about it. Other things, the likes, shares, subscribes, those help me as well. But more than anything, we try and take a relaxed attitude around here so you can come on back next time you need a break. All right, time to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Zubin Lutfullah, Tarak, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Oliver B., Melinda Walters, Emu Delkey, Leotha Boyd, Toy Loli, Becky Sparks, Fernobulax, The Poodle, Zach, Bookworm, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperol, Adam R.D.L. Taylor, Shayla Gourlay, Brendan LaRose, and TT. Thank you for your support. If you want to hear me try and say your name while this little guy tries to chew on my earrings, well, you can check out the Patreon for the support tiers that get you a shout out. Thanks so much. You are a pain in my butt.